Good morning. We're going to make this a sort of a fun conversation. I think what you're talking about is so important. And your approach to it, I think, is different. And so to the degree that we can sort of impart and share with the folks in the room just what you're doing and how you're doing it, and if that's the takeaway, it's going to be incredible, I think, for other people to think about their brands and how they can apply this to their brands. So, per your sort of nice introduction, you have been in this industry for an amazing sort of career in terms of working at unbelievable agencies, helping clients. We even knew each other working on a former client. And so I thought that you might talk a little bit about your sort of career, the kinds of clients you've worked on, and who you're working with today, which everybody knows, and what makes it sort of different to start.
Sure. First, thanks for sticking with us. I know we have one more session, so this has to be really exciting, Gary. Yeah, I'm old, so there's that. I guess that's how.
You're not old. You're wise.
Wise, yeah. I started my career in the 90s, and how things have changed so much in regards to how we represent brands as an agency. Oh, thank you. I was trying to talk loud there. But, I'm really fortunate. I oversee the West Coast for Digitas, and we're part of the Publicis family, and Sephora is one of our main clients out here globally, actually. And what has really been amazing is that over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of our clients across the board really put more of a focus and emphasis around DEI and understanding the importance to being brand stewards as we think about our brand from an inclusive perspective as well as a multicultural perspective. But a lot of brands are still just putting it out there on paper, saying we represent, a multicultural team. We speak to they speak to versus engaging with the different communities. But Sephora really took a very, very different stance over the last couple of years to really make an impact, because they really believe that it's so critical for big brands such as themselves, as well as LVMH, to really be part of a community and help elevate this need for a really missing conversation that's been happening, specifically in the beauty space. But for all of our clients, we're really trying to help them refocus on DEI.
So walk me through, you said that when we were meeting, that Sephora historically had one type of approach, and that they sort of ripped up that playbook and started over. Why don't you share with us historically what has been their approach that they felt like they needed sort of to put the two paddles and sort of restart the heart?
It's amazing, actually. I feel really proud to be able to represent them, because over the last 2 years, they changed their model so that they required, and they put it out for the world to know, over 15% of all products would be represented of any type of DEI-owned company. So specifically, we right now represent within the store and in e-commerce, 15% of all of our products are from Black-owned businesses. But they didn't feel like that was enough, and so they came to us last year and said, we need to do something different that will really revolutionize the way that people think of this community and really bring to the light Black entrepreneurs, Black-owned brands, and then more importantly, our consumers. And so that's how we changed the tune, so to speak, of Sephora, and in the way that we look at DEI. And I think that from our perspective, we thought we had to do something big, but more storytelling to bring to light what's happened over the last few years in this space, and also to really make sure that our consumers related to it and saw the importance of what we as a brand believe in. And so what we did is partner with Vox and HBO to bring a beautiful story together about this space, and we have actually a video to just share what it looked like. I will say that it was a behemoth effort, but a huge props to Sephora for taking that moment to really think of how can we make an impact on the space versus just on our own brand.
What do you think, when you look back, when you look at all the brands that you're working with who are trying to make those DE&I investments, what have they historically done, and what do you think has been missing in terms of sort of how they should make those investments to drive the kinds of outcomes that you're seeing at Sephora?
I think a lot of brands have often said, well, we'll do a different job of targeting, maybe we'll use some influencers in the space, and really dabbled. But the truth is that they haven't realized that the impact from not only a revenue perspective, honestly, but also a loyalty perspective and just the community. community. And so most people will not be willing to put a budget against this type of effort, and if there was, it'd be minimal. When they think about, I was thinking about, Jenny was talking a little bit about the relationship you have with your consumers. There really is something to be said about that relationship, and I think a lot of our brands are not willing to take that jump in terms of making investment to say we stand behind these various different minority groups. We actually understand the challenges that they've been through, and we want to help them grow and in turn help our community grow too.
So, when we had spoken, you said that many brands just have budgets to go against that particular audience, right, but there was no change in what their product lineup was.
That's
and
right.
There's no change in terms of who the vendors were in the actual physical stores as well as online. Do you think that is the biggest piece to actually force the pickup of Black-owned makeup in this particular case, or Black-owned beauty products? Is that what's sort of driving the fact that there's actually leaning in and saying our stores are going to represent brands that are underrepresented, actually physical brands that are in the lineup?
Yeah. I think that's a start of it, but I really think beyond that, what it comes out to is it has to translate to everyone, to your service team, to the people who are within the stores, who communicate, to the right training to ensure that there's a sensitivity towards understanding the different cultures and how we speak with the different consumers, like you would with anything. But I think it's retraining and living and breathing what you've said you would do from a product perspective, but also just in general what your company stands for. So I think it starts, that was a huge shift by making that moment from a product perspective. But I think then there was another moment where they said, how can it just weave through everything that we do? So from a media perspective, for example, we have a certain percentage of all of our budgets this year that go towards a DEI strategy, which is a pretty hefty portion of it. And really it's because we know there's an opportunity there for us to really make a stance from a brand perspective, embrace this community, but also there's something about loyalty. And we've lost a lot of that loyalty over the years without remembering that there's a uniqueness to this audience.
Do you find that you talked a lot about authenticity of how you were speaking to that, and it goes back to the retraining. How do you bring that into the brand and make that? So, for example, many brands will just be like, "Oh, I'm going to lean in a certain percentage of our media budget's going to go against this audience, and we're going to sort of talk about it." But you're like, that's not enough. Like it doesn't resonate with the consumer, and to really sort of see the lift in sales, it has to be more authentic.
Okay.
How do you achieve that sort of authenticity in your experience?
Well, I think a lot of it has been done in again, back to what Jenny was talking about, consumer research, segmentation, and empowering your everyone who works within your organization, from the people in the everyday field to people in the stores to service people on the phone. And so what we've seen with brands like Sephora is they've actually retrained all of their different team members and all their staff to really have a different understanding of how you communicate. But I also think that is also on the outwardly side of the way that you bring yourself in the market, making sure you're sensitive towards all the different types of communication that should be out there. It's a huge effort. But groups like ourselves, Publicis, and other different communication groups help with that and ensuring that you really have that path of migration to ensure that you really can stand up on your feet that way.
Yeah, you were talking a lot about sort of establishing trust, and that there seems to be empty promises where maybe there's budgets and maybe there's sort of like a manifesto written by somebody at corporate, but it doesn't get integrated into the day-to-day.
That's right.
What is that integration to the day-to-day? How does that look, to a consumer who walks into sort of a Sephora store? What are they seeing that's sort of different than what was sort of previous? Yeah,
it's such a proud moment. If you go in today to any of the Sephora stores, you'll have a moment of realizing that it's a personalized touch. They'll come to you with looking at, they see you, they think about ideas immediately and can pick from various different types of products that we know are for your skin tone. It sounds very, you would usually expect that anyways, but the teams weren't trained that way years before. And unfortunately, what happened, we got a lot of backlash of saying that, you don't understand the specific needs of our various different consumers. We lost a lot of consumers that way. And, you did have different brands coming through that really understood that need. So I think there's a bit of a personalization touch. And, we talk about things like dynamic creative and using data to inform us. But I think we often forget that there's still a brick and mortar aspect to a lot of our retail conversations that we have. And we have to make sure that people on the ground understand that personalization as well. And they live and breathe that. And so that I think has been a huge change for us and a huge difference. And hopefully everyone sees that when they go into Sephora as well.
And that's not like media budgets. It's not, it's sort of a commitment and a training budget more so than anything else. So it feels authentic to the brand itself.
It's a payoff. You were talking about a lot of our different competitors out there have, the manifesto that says it. But do they ever, really pay off on it? Not always. We've seen that a lot with a lot of our brands, that they put out the manifesto or some type of a campaign, say they're going to be out there from a media and creative perspective, but the payoff in as a store or online is just not there. And so, part of even what we want to do eventually is get to the place where you're on your site and you have a real personalized experience based on who you are. We're coming out with some really new, fantastic products which are going to allow for you to navigate our online experience just based on this DEI effort.
So you were trying these different things. You realized that sort of it starts with training at home. It also starts with sort of a commitment to investment. But you also had the sort of the PR challenge of, obviously these experiences that weren't that good a few years ago, and that really did piss off, not piss off, but weren't perfect for the consumer. How do you then signal to the market that you've made these commitments and that they should try you again, or they should come in and experience the new experience that you sort of leaned into? How did you were sort of talking a little bit about how do you signal the market that you've made this commitment and that you should get that chance to sort of showcase what you've been doing?
For us, for Sephora specifically, it started with a full press release of openly saying out to the world that we were going to have 15% of our products, which is a huge statement because you have to commit to it, right? We're a publicly traded company. Once you say something like that, that's a big deal. The second piece also, I think, is just ensuring that, you do a little bit more than that. And that's really what we created a film, which we'll again show you in a couple of minutes, which committed a little bit more to how we would bring it into market. So we said we were actually going to now expand to 255 of our stores with a fashion fair makeup line that had died basically and had gone away. And we were going to, as a partner with them, bring it to life and bring the story to life as well. So I think, it started with more of a public announcement, and I would say, but you have to be willing to commit to it. So fortunately enough, Sephora's entire executive team was so behind this, and they knew what an impact it had been, and knew also in the beauty space what a loss had been out there, honestly, for such a huge consumer base. So they took it really seriously, and to fact of making a full movie that went on HBO, we ended up winning Tribeca Film Awards. For us, it was such a proud moment because we knew it wasn't just talk; it was really weaved within everything that Sephora and LVMH do as a brand.
And you also said that part of how you went about this is you actually revamped the stores themselves, the layouts of the stores. Right. Why don't you walk through that, and then I would love to sort of show how this documentary brought all of this to life.
Yeah. Well, I think, we weren't actually part of the revamp of the stores themselves, but what they really did do is they moved things around to make it more friendly, so you could find different products depending upon your skin tone. We also have some new products coming out now where you're actually able to walk in, have a consultant come to you, go through a technical AI experience, and quickly then point you in the right direction. So part of it was just a layout of where the DEI-focused, very multicultural products lived. So it used to be really hidden, to be honest with you, and there was no area that really brought it to life. So, for me, maybe having a dark tan skin, I really couldn't find anything, honestly, myself. So it took weaving through things. Now you have a section that really allows for you to go in and have more of a personalized view.
Yeah, that's great. And then you, sort of having done this, you've made the commitment culturally. It's more than just sort of spend it's actually products in store. It's relaying out the store and sort of highlighting this section. It's becoming sort of, as you said, it became foundational. It wasn't like a side DEI experience. It was sort of foundational and a part of now the core of the business. Okay. You then sort of said, okay, how do we sort of need to get this out there in a bigger way? And that's where you sort of leaned leaned into film festivals, and you actually put together a documentary around that. Talk to us a little bit about that experience. Why did you choose that route and what's worked sort of really well about it?
Yeah, we try to figure out what's the best way to go to market to really embrace what they've already done, but also create much more PR buzz and really just authenticity, again, around the belief. And I think the reason we went, Vox was the one who brought this great idea to us of doing this. We knew we had to do something fundamentally different to change things. And, when you're thinking of that, you have to think big. But we didn't want to also spend billions and billions of dollars. So part of the reason we did this was we knew that it had legs on its own. So once we put it out there, even, the thing, again, accolades were amazing, but what we found is it was one of the top 30 shows watched on HBO. We ended up having, sales went up phenomenally as well. But more importantly to us, loyalty actually with this consumer base went up. And I think that's when it hits home, because you realize, you're putting in a promise through a beautiful film that shows like the struggles that, these Black-owned businesses have gone through and where they are today and how we can help them as a brand, but also how we can continue to be there for our consumer. And I think that was the real, we were trying to look for, I hate to say full funnel, but like a full funnel approach that would really allow for our brand to come out in the market with a really big, meaningful thing that no one had done in our space too, but really change fundamentally what beauty was about.
And it was also about sort of telling a story and personalizing these brands in a way where people, when they walked into the store, they actually not only recognized it for the label, but they recognized the people behind it and the experience behind it, and made it part of why they felt like they were sort of supporting a larger cause, not just buying a makeup line for and beauty line for what it is. Do we want to roll the film?
If this brand relaunch doesn't succeed, other little girls might not see the Eunice Johnson story. Girls might not see people that look like them, models that look like them, shades that work for them and their skin tones.
You guys know much about Fashion Fair Cosmetics? It's been around since the 70s. It was created by a woman of color.
I told Mrs. Johnson, I said, you could be the black Estee Lauder. Well, she loved that.
I've saved all my money and I went right to the Fashion Fair counter. She's like, what do you need? I said, I want everything.
Fashion Fair changed the way I looked at beauty, making it feel like there was a space for us.
What is so interesting, though, is that its demise comes so quickly thereafter.
Fashion Fair fell off because they took their consumer for granted. Nothing more.
You feel abandoned.
Everybody loves a good comeback story.
We are relaunching Fashion Fair.
Wow.
It's time to go.
This is a beloved and historic brand. I want to do justice by it.
Do you think Fashion Fair would be relevant today?
We've been supporting white brands all of our lives. Why not have something that's specifically for us?
Can the brand deliver?
The global supply chain problem will get worse before it gets better.
I need 151,000 to complete production, so we're short 101,000 there.
If Fashion Fair doesn't thrive, history is at stake.
Oh, Lord, how much extra do you pay for that?
Never mind.
Makes me smile every time I see it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So what's in store for this year, and what does phase 2 look like?
Well, we're expanding our DEI efforts. I can't talk too much about everything, but just know big things are coming. We've really, we've done an incredible job of focusing on the Black community and really bringing that to life and our commitment there. So that's not going away. But what we're trying to do now is explore all the other communities that have also had similar challenges and really think thoughtfully of how we can continue to really bring to life these communities in a leadership way from a beauty perspective and make sure that they're all heard and thoughtful. And not just in the U.S. It's interesting. We have put together a full team at our agency that focuses on DEI. So my counterparts in EMEA, the same thing. In Canada, the same thing. We each one of our teams has a DEI-focused team that actually thinks a little bit more thoughtfully than we have been in the past of how we really approach this from both a media and creative perspective.
You know, one of the fundamental things that you were sharing is that this is not just a not-for-profit activity, but it's actually been a boon to business, and that's actually created new revenue streams that you didn't have before. Why don't you share a little bit about how this is actually commercially, you know, something that has been not only viable, but has actually been a growth area for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you know, of course, I want to first say that in the end of the day, this is really first and foremost about the consumer and building really more of that community focus, but it has been very helpful for just overall the bottom line. And I think, I mean, we've gotten even to the point of, I was telling Harry that we created DEI dashboards for us to really monitor like the financial benefit, you know, across the group. And, you know, I think what's happened is that by paying more attention, logically, as you can imagine, to a personalized approach, it really does pay off. And I think one of the things that we maybe as brand hadn't spent much time with is understanding the opportunity of really having that connection with this audience and what it does. You know, people want to be heard, people want to be embraced in an authentic way again, and it has really, really benefited us as a group, which is why we're really growing this across globally, honestly. It started in the U.S. with our team, and we're trying to help our other clients at Publicis as well really have the same type of approach.
You know, as much as you want DEI to be a pillar to the business, not many people connect the dots on how they can, you know, correlate that to sort of business, you know, areas and business growth. Can you talk a little bit about, like, have you seen dollars around these products and around the products that you are leaning into? And I know that there's, you had mentioned sort of the Latinx audience as being a critical new area of growth for you, given the size of the population that you can open. Can you walk us through sort of like some of the things that, or even beyond expectations, that, without getting into obviously the numbers, that you were surprised about sort of seeing as you sort of leaned into these initiatives?
Well, I think it's typical media stuff when you start doing audience research and looking at the buying power, looking at the volume of people out there that really, you know, we're missing having a conversation with. And it seems so simple, but, you know, typically for most of the brands we work with, we think about segments as a beauty buyer, or you think of someone as maybe, a one-time buyer, things like that, versus thinking about an ethnic community where there is a much bigger opportunity. So this is reshape and refocus of the way that we've been thinking about segmentation, and then thinking about their consumer journey as well. So I think, again, we didn't realize that, you know, there was a loyalist side of this where it's very different for each community. And some communities, once they're in, they're always in. And it starts from specifically with one community we're looking at right now, when they're kids, they see what their moms use and they know that's where their mom goes, and that loyalty stays there forever. So I think we needed to take a really much deeper dive into like who these consumers were, and the opportunity was huge from what we were missing, honestly.
That's great. So when you look at when you look at other brands that are out there, other clients, other brands, not all of them are Sephora that have the kinds of budgets that Sephora, that can put on a feature film, a documentary film, that can put it into Tribeca, that can get it on HBO. What would your advice be if you're not dealing with that sort of scale of opportunity, but you're trying to implement sort of similar types of approaches that will be successful, but maybe not require as much sort of investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it starts with just looking at, you know, your company as a whole. First, I say part of it's, you know, something outside of what us agencies do, and just auditing and seeing, you know, it's where I really started with seeing like how their own internal, you know, employees are feeling, right? Are they feeling that they have that inclusivity? Then start looking at your consumers, the same thing. From a budget perspective, I think that part of it is really looking at the long-term game versus the short-term game, and thinking about, you know, by investing in this audience from a small scale, and this is what we do with a lot of our clients, you know, forecasting out, you could see maybe a short-term gain, but the long-term game, by having the loyalty there, it's huge. Again, just as my chat with Ginny outside from Zappos, for example, you know, they've also now recently had a pillar, but they started really small. You know, it wasn't a huge dive in, but they saw the propensity for change from not only, you know, how they were communicating with consumers to like the long-term big game, and it's worked for them too. So.
All right. Well, I think we pretty much have a couple of minutes and wanted to open up to Q&A. So thought, any questions? Yeah, right here in the pink.
Hey there, Sharice Winecki with Waterpick. I was just curious, I know my experiences working with different types of community members. So for example, African American or Black population, it's delicate. And you really have to make sure that you're authentically and respectfully representing them and engaging with them. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you control for that or maneuver around that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes in training. We have specific, we're very fortunate, like Harry mentioned, that we've gotten deep from an agency perspective and also the client side. So we do a lot of training around, how to communicate properly. And it's not just for the DI, honestly, it's across the board. I think a lot resides on PR team, to be honest with you, and ensuring that your legal team and your PR team are in sync and everyone has the right training. There are always going to be bumps, but in today's world where social plays such a big role too, even to our social monitoring team, it's a huge deal. We have to make sure that the conversations that they have on the social channels are going to be very, very, thoughtful and make sure that they're thinking about every person that they're having a conversation with. Yeah.
And there's such brand equity that you build when you do something like what you just showed. So like you're telling a story and there's clearly investment that goes into telling that story, and it's something that people are, and it's brought to you by Sephora. So it's, once you have sort of invested in and build sort of that brand equity that comes out of that, you're like, okay, now I'm going to authentically talk to you about how I can sort of build this business. But it becomes more unassailable. It's hard for people to say you're not leaning in when you're making those kinds of sort of broad scale PR, communication, and investment initiatives around telling the story of what you're doing. And I think that's why what you put together, something like it doesn't need to be a full-length feature documentary, but can you authentically tell those stories, find the right partners to tell those stories about leaning into, Waterpick, and say, like, here are the people that are actually leaning in, are you? And I think that authenticity around finding those right partners, which doesn't require a lot of money, but you can, and still be very successful doing that. You could do that at a smaller scale, and then that gives you sort of the authority to talk to that community.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, I'm Chris Licata from Ad Marketplace. I actually met my boss, Todd, at a Brand Innovators event, so thank you, Brand Innovators. You sound wise, and you certainly do not look old, so you must be using Sephora products.
Sephora, right?
As a consumer myself, I'm pretty sure Color IQ technology is Sephora's technology. From a media channel perspective, where can consumers look to for new innovative solutions like Color IQ technology? Are you going to be innovating on social media similar to, TikTok, Clinique's Black Honey Lip Balm that looks different on every consumer?
Yeah.
Where should we be looking for the new and upcoming innovation that you're working on?
It's coming soon. Social's becoming a much bigger channel for us, and I think across the board, we're just coming out with our launch soon. But across the board, I'd say bigger investment in social, some pretty big partnerships with BIPOC partners. So we've increased our investment by twofold with specifically BIPOC, as well as I'd say in-store and more experiential. So we're doing more pop-up type of things. We want to bring things to the market. Experiential hasn't gone away. People are people, and we want people to feel and live and breathe it. We're also doing a little bit interesting things, from an AI perspective that will be coming. We have, Sephora is really digging in deep to think about things like the metaverse and things like Sephora is something we've been talking as well. So interesting things to come.
I will stay tuned. Thank you.
Perfect. One last question, or I think we're actually at time, but there's a last question. Otherwise,
if there's a last question, sure.
Guess we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, I'm picking up a theme here today between this conversation, the conversation with Jenny, the conversation with Craig this morning, and it's the authenticity of storytelling. And Harry, you and I had a conversation last night at dinner with Jenny about allowing the people to tell their story and just empowering that story to be told. And I think that's what is working here, is the fact that it's not the brand telling the story, it's the people themselves. So really incredible stuff. Very well done. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.